Hello, my name is Tony Berard. Today we're going to continue the series on chess and dice chess for newcomers. This will be part 2 of the series. I don't know how many parts there will be. Just depends on how much there is to say, which is basically infinite, but we'll stop her somewhere. Alright, so yesterday I ended with basically just doing the rules of chess. So now we're going to talk about the parts of the game of chess, because you have to know more than just moving the pieces in chess to be a good chess player. The first part of a game is called the pregame, or the opening. Some people call it the pregame, some people call it the opening. Now there are some opening principles that one should open with. So I'm going to pause the video and set up the chessboard. Okay, so I have a chessboard here set up, and we'll discuss a few ideas. One of the ideas is to control the center. And so white will usually move pawn to king 4, or pawn to queen 4 on the first move. I'm going to pause the video again for one moment. That's better. Alright, I had some smudge on the glass of the thing, causing my video to be smoky looking. But I cleaned it off and it's much better now. Alright, so a chess player will play pawn to king 4 or pawn to queen 4, normally. Sometimes you'll see pawn to queen bishop 4 or c4, using algebraic notation as they call it. A chess player usually won't resign on the first move. That was me just knocking the pieces over. I'm trying to watch the thing through the camera, and it's a little bit like looking at, I guess, a pond or something. The fish in the water are not where they appear to be. So, and so you'll want to move, you have to move 2 pawns in order to get your bishops out. Because this dark squared bishop, you have to move this pawn or this pawn to get it out. To get this light squared bishop out, you have to move this pawn or this pawn to get it out. Moving the center 2 pawns can get both your bishops out. And the center pawns can fight for the center. Once you decide on which side you're going to castle on, either this side or this side, the queen side, you'll want to keep those pawns back if you castle on this side. And you'll fight on the other side. A lot of times if one player is castled queen side and the other player is castled king side being the side with the king, and queen side being the side with the queen. So if this player castles king side and this player castles queen side, then this guy will throw his pawns at the king and this guy will throw his pawns at that king, and it'll be quite the battle. Alright, but if not, if they castle on the same side, then the pawns might be restrained to some degree, and they'll fight it out both on the queen side. Or if they both castle queen side, then they'll fight it out on the king side, because they want to maintain some level of safety for their king. Sometimes not. These are general principles I'm giving you, and the elite players know when they can violate these principles and find a path to victory. Beginning level players should follow the principles, otherwise they'll pay for it. Timing in chess is everything. Timing is measured in what we call tempi. So like if you move this and then this, it took you 2 tempi to get your pawn to here. Whereas if you moved it up in 1 turn, that's better because it only took 1 tempi. Similarly, you'll get moves in the game where, say, a queen might capture here. And then if you move your knight out, then you get the benefit of moving your knight out and forcing black to move the queen. So that's a lot of times how players will gain tempi, by making a threat that the opponent has to waste a turn on. And if that happens too much, then the player can get behind. And that can be converted into a win a lot of times against an elite level player. So, with that said, you'll want to move your bishop once and only once in the opening. This bishop guy also, once and only once. The knights, once and only once. Knights do better in the center. So move this guy to here and this guy to here. Sometimes you'll move the pawn out first and then move your knight out so that the knight doesn't block the pawn. Sometimes, though, you'll put the pawn in front of the knight. So, as you gain experience, you'll know better when to push the pawn first. So if you want to get your queen out, and you had that pawn move first, then the knight, well, then your queen can come out just fine. So, but if your queen's already been moved out there, and you're going to castle queenside, well, then you want to leave the pawn back. You might want to do this. This is called fianchettoing your bishop. I think it's an Italian term. So, those are some ideas in the opening. So, this opening, or the pregame as you might call it, should last between 12 to 20 moves. And there's a big catalog of books. One company that does it is called the Encyclopedia... what's it called? No, the Informant. I guess Batsford does one too. Batsford Chess Openings. Turn the camera away so you wouldn't see me yawn. Although you heard me yawn. I guess I'm a little tired. Sorry about that. There's the English... Well, there's an opening called the English Opening. I was thinking there was an English something of chess openings, but maybe I'm wrong. I think there is something called the Encyclopedia of Chess Openings. All right. So, these various things, catalog in painstaking detail, the various openings. And there are thousands and thousands of them. Most of them have names. So one of the things players do is they try to get a new opening named after themselves. One opening is called the Ruy Lopez. Its moves are pawn to king 4, pawn to king 5. Then the bishop. So, oh yes, then the knight comes out. That's right. And it says, I'm going to take your pawn. Well, then this side plays this. Okay, I'll defend my pawn. So if you take my pawn, then I'll take your knight. So then the next move in the Ruy Lopez is to put the bishop here. And that says, okay, I'm going to take your knight first, and then I'm going to take your pawn. And so, then sometimes what people will do is they'll play this. Yes, it pins the knight, but it defends the pawn so that if the bishop captures the knight, and then the pawn can recapture the bishop, then you'll have a pawn here. But then white won't be able to take this pawn. So that's one way of defending against it. Some people ignore it. They'll do this. And then the bishop might capture. And then... then what? I don't really know this opening that well. In fact, I don't know any opening that well. And then that might happen. Then the pawn will fall. But black will gain another kind of advantage. The advantage of time, this tempi thing that we're talking about. And so the bishop might come out now, making the knight move. And so black has 3 pieces out, and white only has 2 pieces out for the price of this pawn. Is that enough to win? No, but it might be enough to get the pawn back later on. So tempi, is worth material. And the activity of the pieces is one of the primary concerns of the elite players. Having passive pieces is like terrible for them. And so you want to have activity. So after the pregame comes the middle game, and that's where the great complexity of chess shows itself to its fullest. And that's mostly what people think of when they think of chess, is the middle game. Because the pregame is kind of boring, you get some setup, and a lot of them, most people might not know very much about. The elite players, of course, know a lot about a lot of the openings, but most people that play casually don't know much about the openings. But once they get to the middle game, that's where they can start to peer into the position and, really start calculating and going into deep thinks and stuff, and that's where the real joy of chess is for a lot of people, is the middle game. So after the violence of the middle game, then it's quite tranquil by comparison, the end game. When there's just a few pieces left, then the kings come into play and fight for critical squares to get your pawns to, because then from there you can get them to queen, and so the fight goes on like that. So one of the things about the end game is you don't want to be left with pieces where you don't have enough power to checkmate. And of course, your opponent knows what these piece groupings are too. And so a lot of times at the elite levels, a draw will be had because the players do know these combinations of pieces so well. And sometimes certain pieces just need to be in certain positions, like something called the wrong colored bishop. If you have a rook pawn, and the wrong color bishop to protect the square, the king can get into that corner and you won't be able to force him out because the bishop's the wrong color. So even though 4 points and one of them is a pawn, the pawn cannot be made to forced to be promoted into a queen to win the game. There's many kinds of positions like this. And so studying the endgame in chess is a big deal. So you have to know which pieces to be left with and where they're at. It's a lot of learning to do to get good at the end game. I guess the end game has a lot of memorization to it, and the pre-game has a lot of memorization to it. The middle game still is not a memorized thing for the advanced players. A lot of the types of tactics that you'll find in the middle game, like a windmill or even knight sacrifices, or sometimes even queen sacrifices. It's usually we say, since the queen is so powerful, if you sacrifice the queen, you're going to want checkmate, because if you don't pull it off and the opponent retains the material advantage of the queen sacrifice, if you don't get your checkmate, then you'll probably lose. So yeah. So that's what I'd like to say about chess. So now we'll turn our attention to dice chess. I'll pause the video for a moment. Well, I don't need to pause the video. So let's just put these in there. It's a lot quicker to tear them down than to set them up. Alright, so this is the turn scale for dice chess. And I'm thinking about renaming this game slightly. I might put an adjective or something in with dice chess, like awesome dice chess or something. I don't know. I'm still working on that. And so, anyway, this is the turn scale. There's 4 operations possible in dice chess: increment, decrement, capture, and move. These are their symbols, and these are their point values. And on the bottom here is a comment. Each turn is 6 points, except White's first turn is restricted to 3 points to balance the game. All right, so we're going to show some things here. Increment. So if you're going to increment this 3, it would be to a 4. It costs 1 turn point to do that. If you want to increment the 4 to a 5, it costs 1 point to do that. Then if you want to increment to a 6, that would be another point to do that. So starting from a 3, if you're going to increment it to a 6, that costs 3 points. If you're going to decrement, say you want to decrement the 3 to a 2, that'll cost 1 point. And then decrement to a 1, that will cost another point. So that's increment and decrement. Pretty easily done. And you can do it on different pieces. Not your opponent's pieces, but your own pieces. Okay. So now I'm going to talk about the mobility range. So you can move to the number of spots, up to the number of spots showing on the die. So like this 2 right now can move here or here, here or here, here or here, I guess in the flats too, here or here, here or here, here or here, here or here, here or here. So that's a total of 8 times 2 is 16 squares. So that's pretty powerful. A knight in chess can only get to 8 squares. So this is what a 2 can do. Let's suppose we have a 6 here. That's going to be like a queen because there isn't 6 squares to get to the edge of the board. There's only 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So that's 14. 1, 2, 3. That's 17. 1, 2, 3. That's 20. 1, 2, 3. That's 23. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 27. A queen can get to 27 squares in a single turn, and this is why. A 6 can also do that. But a queen can do something a 6 cannot. What is that, you ask? Suppose we have a 6 and a queen here. The queen can get to this square. The 6 cannot get to this square because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's a travel distance of 7 squares to get to here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 6 can only land here on this black square. It cannot land here. So the queen is a little more powerful even than a 6. And so these mobility ranges, how far the piece can go. Then we have the power rank. The power rank is a reverse relationship to the mobility range. So the power rank, a 1 is stronger than a 2. A 2 is stronger than a 3. A 3 is stronger than a 4. A 4 is stronger than a 5. And a 5 is stronger than a 6. So you have to have a power rank greater than or equal to that which you are attempting to capture. So suppose we have a 6 here and a 4 here. The 6 cannot capture the 4. It's within range, but the 6 doesn't have the power ranking. The 6 power rank is lower than the power ranking of a 4. So you can combine operations in a single turn to make things happen. Like, let's say this was a 5 for an example. Now, if this is the position and the 6 wants to capture the 5, Well, the 6 doesn't have the correct power ranking. Its power ranking is lower than a 5. So, for 1 point, you can decrement your 6 to a 5. Now the 5 has the correct power ranking. Then the 5 can move for 3 more points. So the decrement costs 1 point. The move costs 3 points. To actually land on the square is an additional 2 points. So decrement, move, capture. Decrement is 1 point. Move is 3 points. That takes it up to 4 points. And capture is 2 more, which makes 6. Each turn is 6 points. So, if you're within 1 increment or decrement of the power level needed, generally a decrement, because you don't need to increment to capture a piece. Well, actually, you might need to increment to capture a piece. Let's say that 4 was here. Well, let's put it here. That's a 3. So the 3 needs to get to a 4 to capture this. So for 1 point to increment to a 4, then now the power range is still okay, because the 3 was certainly okay. A 4 is still okay to capture. But now the 4 has the mobility range as well. So now the 4 can move and capture. That would be a 6-point turn. So starting from a 3, you can increment, that's 1 point. Moving is 3 more. Capturing onto that square, that's another 2 points, makes 6 total. So that's the capturing. And there's an initial position in fighting chess. But I'm running a little low on time. So I'll do some clerical issues, and that'll be it for the video for today. So we'll have to start with the setup of the pieces for fighting chess tomorrow. Not fighting chess, dice chess. I guess my first clerical issue was somebody told me that they would like introductory videos made because they didn't know how to play chess. I'm like, okay. So I made one yesterday and I'm making one today. And this person told me that he Googled dice chess and saw that there were other games out there, not like mine. So I also did my own research. And I found that dice and chess have been around together for a while. In the 1400s and 1500s or something like that. They used to use dice along with chess to play some interesting games. And, well, we don't do that much nowadays. I had never heard of it before, but I guess in the past it was done a lot. So what I will say is I have seen some variants out there using dice. The ones I saw, my game is definitely better than. So it's without at risk of sounding arrogant, I suppose. My game is better, so it would be worth your time to study my game and not these other ones. I guess briefly I'll just show one. One, like if you wanted to move this 4, you'd have to roll the 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. And it's a 4 again for the next time. So you have to flip it, and rock it. And the dice were the same size as the squares, so that, I'm sliding it a little bit in place, but you had to move them like that. That's not very friendly. So, to me, that's greatly confusing. With the way I have it, you can go up to that distance, so you're at freedom to get this dice to bend to your will, as opposed to messing around with the geometry of the cube and memorizing, where the numbers are as you flip, where it's going to be. That would be just horrible on the mind, in my opinion. It'd be easier to just make plans and be like, I want this piece to be here and this piece to be here, and you can kind of plan it out that way. But the rolling of the die, flipping one face at a time to get to a destination, and you have to roll the die that many times. When I say roll it, it's in the fashion I showed you, not rolling like you would normally think of rolling a die. So yeah, it's just crazy. So my game is better. So you can get a copy of Dice Chess if you go to www.thegamecrafter.com. And you can put in the search box Dice Chess, just like that, and you'll find the game. I have a YouTube group called The Clever Inventor. Please join it. The more the merrier. Have a great day. This is Tony Berard signing off.